Hey everyone, I am Kari the Mortician. I'm a mortician here in Michigan. In my 3 years doing YouTube videos, I have never received more emails, messages on Instagram, Facebook, all over the place about a news story like I have in the last 48 hours. The 20-year-old woman from Detroit that was declared dead, her body was transported to the funeral home and then was found to still be living. I think this resonates with so many of you because this is like a worst fear. Waking up in the casket, waking up in a cooler, waking up at the funeral home, and knowing that everybody thought you were dead and not being able to get out of the casket. Somebody's trying to embalm you alive. So all these fears that I think resonate so much with each of you, which is why that story hit home. And so many of you have sent it to me and said, how can this happen? So I think the first big thing to look at is this is quite an anomaly. Like, this is not happening every day. This is not happening every month even. This is a very isolated situation that this is happening in. So the story goes, 20-year-old Tamisha Beauchamp was a special needs individual, and she was found unresponsive on Sunday. Whether she has had some kind of a heart attack or other type of medical condition situation, still not defined as clear that I can find, but she did have some type of an episode, and the EMTs were called in by her family. When they arrived, they worked for about 30 minutes and finally declared her dead. At that point, I have heard that she had been on hospice over the years. I cannot find that to be 100% true or not, just because of the different news sources. But I did hear she was on hospice over the years. She would not have currently been on hospice if the EMTs were called in. That's part of going on hospice, is you do not call in medical professionals to try and revive you once you have passed. So at this point, they would then call the medical examiner's office once they have declared her dead, because it is an unattended death. She wasn't on hospice currently. There was no doctor present. She wasn't in a medical facility. So they would then need to involve the medical examiner's office to decide if an autopsy was necessary. And that's one of the big questions you've asked me. Why no autopsy? 20-year-old woman, no autopsy? That seems crazy. However, Ms. Beauchamp seems to have had long-standing medical and health conditions. So when the medical examiner's office was contacted, I cannot find if an investigator went on site or if they were just told the scenario over the phone. Both situations do happen. If there's no apparent foul play, there's no physical body harm to the individual, and there's long pre-existing health conditions, the investigator may do a talk over the phone to the medical personnel, but possibly they were on site, they came, they looked around, they checked out medications that were in, and then maybe they called her primary. I don't know any of this for certain because that kind of period of the story I haven't seen any definition on yet. But these are some of the scenarios I have run into with medical examiners and them being involved. And clarifying, the medical examiner themselves does not come to the home. These are investigators that work for the medical examiner's office, and they do the on-site. The medical examiner is the pathologist is who does the autopsy, determines cause of death later if they're involved. So I would assume in this situation that possibly they called her primary care physician, and the primary care physician said, yes, there's a long-standing medical, we will sign the death certificate, no autopsy needed. I don't know that for certain, but that would be my first guess as to how that played out. So then the family called the James H. Cole Funeral Home in Detroit. They came, brought her into their care, and she was there for a short period of time. They had permission to embalm, and they were going to go start to embalm. But when they got to looking at her, determined she was still breathing. That's when they very responsibly, very quickly, I'm like, how many funeral directors discover you're going to embalm and you're getting ready and then the person's breathing. I can't even imagine my first response. Like, am I going to be with it enough to quick grab 911 and call them? Or am I going to be freaked out for a few minutes? Like, that they responded very quickly. So kudos to them. I know some of the reports say, thankfully she had her eyes open. Many deceased have their eyes open. So just because she's living and her eyes were open really doesn't affect the story, honestly, at all, unless her eyes were blinking, open, closed. But a majority of individuals that we bring into our care, their eyes are open. Closing your eyes is a muscle response, just like closing your mouth. So eyes open, mouth open is very common for a deceased when we bring them into our care. I think some of the stories seem to gear towards the fact they were going to be doing their job in embalming like they were doing something wrong. So I'm thankful that they responded like they did. So then she was transported to the hospital, and that is where it seems she is still at. It says a lot of the stories say she's on a ventilator and being treated. So this, of course, is going to be a lawsuit nightmare, and there's many investigations going on right now. You've got the medical examiner, you've got the EMTs, you've got all sorts of individuals in the mix to make sure everything was done in order and completely. The question, how does this happen? How do we know how this happens? Maybe her pulse rate dropped. Maybe her heart did stop for a few minutes. Maybe her breathing was so shallow. There's all these things that we don't clearly know. We were not there. We don't know what those readings showed, but this has happened in other places and at other times that your body shuts down so far that they can't see, either in readings like EKG readings or anywhere, that you have activity inside your body. However, a little while later, there you are again. So I'm very thankful for her family. They get more days with her. I'm so sorry for her family. I can't imagine going through that. Your daughter's dead and then she's back. Like those emotions and that swing and that fear. So that has to be terrifying and just heart-wrenching for them. And I'm sure that the medical personnel that are involved are going through an insane range of grief and worry and sadness and, oh crap, how did that ever happen? So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But I have never received so many emails and people passing on stories of this one event. And so I wanted to give you my feedback on it. So obviously everyone's worst nightmare for a family, for an individual, for a funeral home, staff member to encounter, but we'll see how this plays out, guys. Thanks for bringing the story to me, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.